Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the digital book launch for our two latest comic books. We have, first of all, Elizabeth Choy, which was released earlier this year, and Sacred Guardians, which was just released last month. So today we're very happy to be part of AFCC's digital symposium book launch. And yeah, throughout this session, you can leave questions through the Q&A function. And then we'll get back to you towards the end of the session. I'll be going through, first of all, Elizabeth Choy, her story. It's a graphic novel version that tells the story of Elizabeth Choy's experience during World War II, as well as a bit of her life before and after that. And then for Sacred Guardians, this is a very exciting project. It's an all new, like a one-shot comic book that is a mix of superhero, fantasy, as well as ancient history. So we have different heroes set in different parts and from different cultures in Southeast Asia. And then they join forces to fight a mysterious immortal demon. So these are the two books that we'll be talking about today. These two, what's unique, and I guess what they have in common is that they're both comic books and comic books for kids. When we say kids, we're thinking about readers in primary school and above. And these two books are both now being released in English, and they're intended for a local audience as well as for Southeast Asian readers. So without further ado, I am going to go into the new, I'm going to start presenting about both of these very interesting comic books. Okay, so first let's look at Elizabeth Choy, her story. Okay, so I'm not sure how many of us here are familiar with the story of Elizabeth Choy, but she is essentially one of Singapore's most iconic historical figures. I think when we hear of the name Elizabeth Choy, she's most famous for being a war heroine. So she's someone who resisted Japanese, like a military brutality when she was still around. She was actually a very ordinary person. She moved to Singapore at a young age, and then she was living and working here when the World War started. And then what was so extraordinary about her was that even though she was captured and she was tortured by the soldiers, she never resisted, and she managed to stand fast throughout the entire experience and emerge an even stronger and more resilient person. So her contributions to our country have been, we've seen it across all aspects of society. She was very well known for being a teacher. She was teaching in St. Andrews for many, many years. I think many of her ex-students will remember her very fondly for being a very compassionate, and a very strong person. And not only that, she was also someone who helped to set up the School of the Blind for the Society of the Visually Handicapped. And even more than that, she was also one of Singapore's first female politicians, if you can say that. She was part of the one of the earliest legislative councils in this country. So she's such an exceptional person, and what was perhaps the most exceptional part of her was how all these qualities were very, I guess, like, were put into focus, were really tested during the World War. And so we have done a graphic novel with Zaki, Ragman, and Jalil to kind of tell the story of what happened during this period. And now, talking a little bit more about our creators. So the interesting thing about this team is that one is a comic artist, and then the other is actually someone who, Danny is kind of screenwriting trained, but he's also a comic artist and writer himself. So we have this great team. They've worked on other books before. The most recent publication they did together was Lieutenant Adnan and the Last Regiment, which is also another story about a war hero in Singapore, specifically Lieutenant Adnan. And it's very brilliant how the two of them are able to combine their love for comic books and their love for the superhero genre and apply that to a very like a very real, very historical story. And they're able to have a mix of dramatics and also like apply their comic arts techniques in telling these stories in very, very interesting ways. So I think for Elizabeth Choy and Lieutenant Adnan, these two books are definitely able to, I guess, accompany each other. You know, Lieutenant Adnan shows the resolve of a soldier, whereas Elizabeth Choy, her story is definitely more to tell the story of an ordinary person who, you know, was able to prove herself and, you know, help people around her during very extraordinarily difficult times. And we're very grateful to Danny and Zaki, two wonderful artists themselves, for what they've been able to do with these stories. And we're really glad that younger readers, especially, will be able to have something so, I guess, like so exciting and yet so true to read alongside, you know, other books. You know, say like, you know, if kids like, if they are big fans of like, you know, the Marvel universe and they love all these superhero stories, you know, it's something that we're very happy to see when they take that same excitement and also have that same excitement for local war heroes. Yeah, so throughout this presentation, I'll also be sharing messages from our creators. So over the last couple of weeks, actually, we've done several digital events with our creators, Danny and Zaki, and they've shared a lot of very interesting ideas. And so today we'll be kind of presenting some clips of things that they've said over some of these events. So the first question that we'll talk about today is this question of why do we need heroes? You know, what is the appeal, especially for younger audiences?
We can take these heroes like Elizabeth and Adnan as like local myths, you know. There's a reason why legends and myths live on, like Thor, Zeus, whatever, right? They teach us stories, right? And morals. And, you know, like as a kid, my favorite hero was Batman, right? Batman taught me not to kill, you know, to be the best man you can be, you know, and all that, right? All that good stuff, right? So, I'm not saying I'm the best person, right? But at least if I need to look up to something, I think of Batman, right? And in that sense, like I hope when a young kid wants to look up to a local hero, they can look up to Elizabeth and Adnan and all the other heroes that we have. I would hope that a lot of young girls read it. Women are kind of free, but also people tend to comment about them and in very negative ways, right? And I don't like that, you see. I mean, I just want them to read something like Elizabeth or any inspiring female figure, and I want them to know that like they are strong and they're stronger than they believe that they are.
Yeah, so I think that the other thing that's quite unique about this comic book is that I think it's it's the first time that we've done a full book on this character of Elizabeth Choy. And you know, she's someone that has inspired so many people around her. You know, she lived a very long life and she has made so many contributions and touched so many different aspects of society, and there's so many people out there that really remember her very fondly. So throughout the entire creation process, I think Danny and Zaki made it a very big emphasis, you know, to focus on those qualities of hers that made her such an exceptional person. Okay, so let me let them speak in their own words as to these qualities of Elizabeth. And also just to share a bit, so we're very lucky during one of our other events to have Karen Hoisington with us. She's a speaker and also an educator, and she's someone who's very influenced by the life of Elizabeth Choy, and she's also a distant relative of Elizabeth.
I think the best qualities about her is actually helping others, right? That is the best part. Because in the time where everybody lost everything in life, right? She managed to go to create a camp for those people that really need help. So yeah, I think that's a quality that, taking care of your neighbors, taking care of your families, that you have to take care of. I think the best qualities about her is actually is helping others, right? That is the best part. Because in the time where everybody lost everything in life, right? She managed to go to create a camp for those people that really need help. So yeah, I think that's a quality that, taking care of your neighbors, taking care of your families, that you have to take care of, your country and stuff. Right?
But I think she also motivated herself by serving others, selflessly, and that kept her mentally and physically motivated.
I think, that's something that we can also discuss. Definitely, we're very keen to hear from you readers as well, whether some of you, many of us have heard her name before. And I think it's something for us to reflect upon as well. Like, what are some of these exceptional qualities that Elizabeth Choy had that represents Singaporeans and I guess the best parts of ourselves. So moving on, we'll go into Elizabeth Choy's legacy. So yeah, once again, she's touched many parts of Singapore society, and let's see what they had to say about that, our creators.
So on a personal note, yes, I am a distant relative of Elizabeth Choy's husband, Choi Kun Heng. And I would like to just share that my mother was the most impacted by Elizabeth Choy, who was a teacher herself. So through Elizabeth's advice, Mom became a teacher too, and eventually became the vice principal of Raffles Girls' School and principals of many, many schools in Singapore. So through my mother is then I became a lecturer at Nanyang and Nanyang Polys, including Kyoto University in Japan. So Elizabeth, I think I can just sum it up, left a teaching legacy in my family that is still alive today.
Yeah, and I think it's what Karen shared is really lovely in the sense that it's part of I think Karen's sharing something that's a little bit more from a personal perspective, but for many of us who have heard of this name Elizabeth Choy and reflected, I guess I've read about her story in history textbooks, or say like seen her in TV shows and documentaries that have I think like MediaCorp has done some very good war history media in the past. I think she's someone who has inspired many of us to be the best that we can be, and also to not see any I guess say whether it's a war or a pandemic, that kind of spirit of not letting ourselves be defeated, and also to continue always to try and help other people. That's definitely a legacy that she left behind for people in her family close to her, as well as for people who have read about her and know of her character. Yeah, so I think that's our introduction for Elizabeth Choy. For sure, if we have more questions coming up later, we can go into a little bit more detail about the book. Maybe just to give you guys a little bit of a show and tell, this comic book is a black and white comic book, more than 100 pages of artwork featuring Elizabeth Choy, and say various scenes, including the prison scenes, and also showcasing different parts of her life in Singapore. So definitely if you guys have any questions related to the book specifically, or related to the creators, please use the Q&A function in the Zoom call, and we'll get back to it at the end of the session. And then moving on, let's talk about Sacred Guardians. Okay, so Sacred Guardians, I think it's something that's a little bit different from Elizabeth Choy for sure. It's definitely a much more comic book world type of comic book. It's in full color. As you can see, it's extremely action-packed. We've got lots of fantastical characters and scenes. we've got immortal beings and gods that appear throughout this book. But I think what's similar about these two books is that they are both in the format of visual storytelling, and at the same time, they're both very inspired by history. So for Sacred Guardians, of course, you know, being inspired by history for this comic book wasn't so much about focusing on one person, but rather focusing on the character and the nature of Southeast Asia during ancient times. So for Sacred Guardians, it's set during the 6th and 7th, over the 6th or 7th century Southeast Asian period. You know, this was a time of ancient kingdoms and, you know, like very, very different cultures from what we have today. You know, and then if you can have a look at the cover, for example, I think you might recognize some of these creatures. For example, you know, we have a water buffalo, we have an elephant, we have an eagle, the Garuda, you know, we have a tiger, and of course we have a lion. And these are animals that are pretty characteristic, not so much, not necessarily native to Southeast Asia, but definitely very iconic animals that we associate very strongly with the mythology and also the history of this region. And yeah, so what is Sacred Guardians about? Sacred Guardians is a superhero story, and it's really all about, you know, this incredible world of, you know, gods and immortals, and how like these different characters join forces and work together to fight to save the world. And yeah, talking about the creation of this project, actually this project is quite exceptional for us in the sense that it's actually quite an exciting cross-media project. Aydeel Djoeharie is actually a screenwriter and also a screen director. The origin of this whole project came about because there's a team in Singapore that's creating Singapore's first tokusatsu superhero TV series. It's called Sacred Guardian Singer. And in the process of creating this, you know, like a superhero universe, they decided that the part of their story is going to be told in ancient times. So, you know, they're thinking of a superhero and fantasy universe that extends all the way from ancient Southeast Asia, the 6th and 7th century, all the way to present day. And that's the kind of origin of this comic book project. And it's a very fascinating world that they've built, you know, with a lot of very interesting characters and aspects of like a Southeast Asia culture within. And of course, so Aydeel is a screenwriter and a screen director. It's our first time working with him on this project. This is his first comic book. Very proud of him for definitely like applying, you know, he's created something really extraordinary. And for a debut work, it's really a very strong and very exciting effort. And as for the comic artist, Alan Bay, he's someone who should be quite familiar to those of us who have been following his books. He's a comic artist. His first comic book with Tina Sim called Once Upon a Singapore Traders first came out in 2018. And since then, he's worked on different projects. He's also illustrated the latest edition of Pioneers of Singapore. So he's had a lot of experience illustrating stories related to Singapore history. And he has a wonderful illustration style that's very much for children, very much influenced by influenced by his experience in the animation industry, and also his own love of comics and cartoons. Yeah. So without further ado, let me introduce you guys to this book with an animated trailer for this book. One sec. Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm not sure about you guys, but I think that's really an incredible trailer. And it's only just showing just a very, very little small part of this wonderful book. So like throughout the video, I think you have noticed like there's a lot of like very action-packed scenes, a lot of like sound effects and like and a lot of very like very colorful, vibrant scenes. So that's something that's happening throughout the entire comic book, and it's really a joy and a whole adventure to read this comic book. So like we did earlier, we're going to share some video clips from the creators themselves so that you get a chance to meet them. And also, I guess if you have questions, please do drop them in the Q&A. We're really excited to hear what you guys think of this particular comic book project. And, it's something that there's going to be a lot more coming up from this team. This whole Sacred Guardian story. So we'll be very happy to update you guys about those projects as well. Okay, so let's hear from Alan and Aydeel.
Originally, when I designed them, they are based more on their characteristic.
Yeah, in this part, they're talking about the character design for the characters. So introducing you guys to our exciting cast of superheroes.
Like whether like he or she is like a very brave person, a very hot-tempered, short-tempered person, or very timid person, or person like with a big heart. So you can see that they all have very different different styles, because they are not all from one place. They are, even though they are from Southeast Asia, they are from different regions of Southeast Asia. So of course, Alan was able to show the distinct appearances for our characters. For the clothing wise, probably a bit more fantasy, probably more influenced by like video games and stuff. I think originally there was also some, not really argument, but there's some like concern regarding whether like the Sacred Guardian should be more of like how to say, more humanoid-ish, like transformation.
I think the initial looking, I think the initial appearance for the Sacred Guardians was that they look more animal, more beastly than a humanoid version, because in the tokusatsu genre, I think especially with Sacred Guardians, it's slightly more different, because the idea was for the human and the animal spirits to blend into one humanoid appearance.
Yep, so that was talking about the character universe, and also I guess the interesting thing about these characters is that they are a fusion of very relatable, very human characters. Most of the characters that appear, they are in their teenage years, and they all have this like special connection with their local culture, and how that is fused together, with all these like kind of like godlike powers, as well as creatures, is something that's a very interesting part of this comic book. And just to introduce a little bit, like, this is our artist, Alan, in the red t-shirt, and this is Aydeel in the black t-shirt.
Originally, when I designed them,
oops, sorry. And like we've said a few times, the story is very heavily influenced by the culture of Southeast Asia. And I guess what that means, especially to a publisher like us, is that, it helps to set the scene for this story in places that are relatable to us, places that, we have an inborn feeling towards. I'm sure many of you here, are kind of, let's say, regardless of which part of Southeast Asia you're from, there's a kind of familiarity with the local history and culture throughout the region. And, even if you're Chinese, or let's say, or your ancestors are from India, I think Southeast Asia has always been a very vibrant and diverse place, with generations of immigrants from all cultures. And so that's why, that's something that the writer and artist drew heavily upon in the creation of this story, kind of extracting the details that we know and that we love about this region. So yeah, let's hear back from them.
So we researched the fashions of Southeast Asia cultures, from say the early 100 ADs all the way up to the 1000 AD, and of course both me and Ellen, we had to find like a lot of references. But I think at the end of it, of course, we wanted it to be a bit more special in a sense that it's a fantasy world as well. So I think most of our research also showed that most of Southeast Asia at that time were quite advanced in fashion actually. Of course it was different from the West, but what Ellen said is true. We discovered that Southeast Asia was actually a very vibrant era at that time. In terms of colors, the way they painted their ships, their houses, the flags, and all the cloth hanging at the marketplace and stuff like that.
Okay, so basically this is Chang.
Checker Guardian Gajah.
Gajah, yes.
Yeah. Chang comes from a region that's in the north, in what is today mainly split between Burma and Thailand, right, and Malaysia. Alan took inspiration from the Mekong cultures. Mekong cultures, yeah. So we have a lot of. I think we had a lot of inspiration not just from Thailand. It's like a Burmese, Laotian, and Thai and Cambodian motifs.
Yeah, I think I can add at this point as well that I think throughout the creation process, our writer Aydeel and Ellen, they really spent a lot of time doing the visual research for the various characters. It's really a joy to be able to see such fascinating and exciting characters, and also to be able to recognize some of these things. Like say if you look closely at the elephant character, some of say the gold detailing and the motifs that they selected and applied to, say his hammer in particular, these were based from a lot of visual research that they did. They had quite a lot of photographs circling back and forth. They were quite particular about the choice of colors that they were using for each character. So even just looking at the cover of the book, not only is each character drawing from different parts of Southeast Asia for their visual identity, they're all done in very distinctive ways, with very vibrant detail and color. And I think that's something that makes it a true joy to read. What Ellen is showing here is the art gallery section of the comic book. So aside from the, I think 80 or 90 pages of artwork, they also added in their character designs at the back. And what is really great about the character design as well was that, it was really a collaborative effort that all of us were involved in. So like say while editing from the very early stages, actually Zaki, the artist of Elizabeth Choy, he came in very early on to consult in terms of the concept and the character design for this project. And it's really great because, as a bunch of comic book fans, I think we were all able to really get together around this story and to be really inspired by the story that Aydeel wanted to tell. And yeah, moving along from there. Yeah, I think, so the creative process for this project was a really interesting one. Definitely, it's one of the first times, I think, that we're doing a project that's a comic book prequel to a TV series, and working with people from very, very different kind of training, like, say people with people who have more of a screenwriting or directing kind of experience, and translating that kind of writing and action sense into a comic book. It was a very exciting new project, new style of collaboration for all of us. So yeah, let's hear from Aydeel and Alan again.
So basically, what we did was we had to make sure that the script made a lot of sense in the transition from frame to frame. Script writers like I think we focus more on the words, like the people talking. Sometimes it's the exchange, so that takes a lot of time. But to take that much time, 5 minutes of talking to to squeeze it into 10 frames, that's entirely something else. So
I think it's kind of like a constant, not really battle, but a constant to and fro thing between the artist and the scriptwriter. The scriptwriter always have a lot of words they want to put in, but the artist is always want as much of the space as possible.
Yeah, I think hearing Alan and Aydeel talk about their collaboration with each other is actually really it's very interesting to see how they met and worked together throughout this entire project. And I think that's the joy of working on comics and also reading comic books. The kind of information and storytelling that we absorb when we read a comic book is so much more than just the text. When we see the characters and the action that's brought to life, when we're able to see scenes that are very much full of detail, that draw from historical research. I think what we experience is really, it's a really advanced kind of storytelling, and definitely for this book in particular, they really put in their heart and soul into the details for this book. I think every single character, even the non-main characters, if you look at the stories that are set in different parts of Southeast Asia, the way that they're dressed, the way that the buildings are portrayed, there's a lot of real research and love that went into creating all of these wonderful details for readers. So yeah. And then also, this is something that we wanted to share during today's launch event. As this is a new book, we actually have an ongoing launch promotion for this. We have a discount code on our website at the moment. So you can apply this discount code at checkout when you order this book, and you can get $10 off any purchase of Singapore literature titles, which means all the titles in our web store, including that's by Singaporean writers and creators. So our website is www.asiapacbooks.com. I think if possible, we will put the link in the chat. Yeah, okay, so Carissa just posted the link in the chat. So definitely do check it out. I think if you haven't read Sacred Guardians yet, please do so. I think it is truly, a phenomenal comic book. It's really one of a kind. It's one of the most, vibrant and exciting books that a young reader can experience. So definitely do check it out and, help to spread the word to your friends as well. And yeah, let me see. Okay, so I think we can start the Q&A if there's any questions. But I think aside from the Q&A, there's also quite a lot more that we can share about these two books. So I'm just going to take a quick look and see if there are some questions yet. If not, I will just talk a little bit more about Sacred Guardians, because it's such an exciting first-time project for us. And I think there are some also something that we wanted to talk about today in our book launch event was also just addressing this very specific format of comic books. Comic books are not, yeah, I think like say like the Asian Festival of Children's Content, comic books is not necessarily always the most highlighted format. And also, you know, working on comic books, we understand completely why this is so. You know, comic books are a very small proportion of the book industry because it's extremely labor intensive to create a comic book. And secondly, I think you know, it is also something that is quite rare to see comic books that are made specifically for children and young readers nowadays. Like, you know, let's say we have a lot of children's picture books for preschool age kids, but definitely like comic books may or may not be for that same age group. In fact, like I think we would recommend that for these two comic books, we're thinking more about readers who are in primary school and above. And yeah, like I guess, like, you know, the kind of visual storytelling that we see in comic books is to quite a large extent like a very sophisticated form. And the reason why we continue to keep working on these, you know, is because we feel that this format is really something, you know, like say for comic books and comic strips, the information is delivered in a manner that is so quick. And you know, like it can, like say a image with a caption, you know, it can tell such a the combination of words and image can add up to something that's much more than just the sum of the parts. And this is something that we continue to see, you know, with the comic projects that we work on. So for example, like Elizabeth Choy, I think what we've been able to really reflect and represent in the comic book versus a textual kind of telling of her story is that we're able to really highlight the emotional aspects of her story. I think this is something that, you know, like it's really missing from our history textbooks. When we learn and read about Elizabeth Choy, you know, whether it's in her biography or whether it's in, you know, chapters of a history textbook, what's always missing, I think, is her own personal voice and her own personal, you know, that emotional dimension to what she experienced throughout the war and also like before and afterwards. So in inspiring people to reflect on what she went through, and yeah, and also in trying to reflect on, you know, like the qualities that we can take away from her story, we felt that the visual aspect of comics really helped us to be able to extract the most, I guess, like the most salient points of her story, and to be able to translate that in a very simple manner to readers, regardless of their age. And I think that, you know, this comic book in particular, Elizabeth Choy, is one that people should definitely read and reread and reread, because there is a lot of layers to the way that the story is being told. If you look at the way that Danny and Zaki made the scenes, the way that they arrange the different scenes, you know, using like very dynamic kind of like camera angles to spotlight on the, I guess, like, you know, to create the different moods throughout the story. I think that's really a big part of the emotional experience of reading, and the ability to really like understand a person through visual storytelling. And I think something that, you know, like as publishers we reflect on, so like, you know, while editing these books in particular, like it's very important to us nowadays that we continue to educate our readers and also to cultivate readers who are, you know, very literate when it comes to digesting this kind of information. I think nowadays, you know, like say for schools and say like, you know, for libraries, like we definitely see that you know, like children are very familiar with comic books and children gravitate towards comic books. And the reason for that is because, you know, it's very simple to understand. You know, there are very difficult words in comic books. And we edit our comic books in a way that they are as easily understood as possible. But I think that one kind of like, you know, something about this that is also very important is that you know, like nowadays we're living in a much more visual world than before. Like say the way that people process information nowadays, like all the media that we consume is extremely visual heavy, whether it's say like, you know, news stories, or even say like, you know, just even like just a signposting and you know, public service messages and whatnot. I think society has definitely moved, you know, like we've moved so far in our ability to process and compute data. And a large part of that is the visualizing of stories and the visualizing of like, you know, messaging and information that is that is beyond what we see in the text. So I think like, you know, in cultivating readers for like today's young readers and, you know, future generations, it's becoming more and more important that they are able to be you know, like they're able to understand literacy as something far beyond just text. You know, like say in recent public service campaign, you know, like there's been quite a lot of like public campaigns and about disinformation, and you know, we're all very concerned with this issue of fake news in the media nowadays. And I think like, you know, that kind of visual sense for when something seems to be true or when something makes sense, it's really important to cultivate in readers of all ages. And for us, you know, like it's something that's very natural to comic creators, you know, to be able to understand stories as the sum of, you know, like the visual experience beyond just words. And because of that, like, you know, I think kids who are able to read and understand comic books and able to understand visual details and to be able to understand different parts of a story beyond just the textual form, I think it really helps them in having a better sense for the things that are around them and understanding information beyond just the written text. And I think that's why we're very keen to see like the way that there are some schools that have been very welcoming of our comic creators and also our comic books. I think that they're on the right track in the sense that you know, they're able to see that of all the books that the kids are reading today, they're the most excited about comic books and illustrated books, and they're able to lean into that and to teach the kids and use that as a lever to teach the children about visual storytelling and also media literacy in a way that I think will make the kids much more all-rounded readers, you know, and I guess to give them you know, like better skills in different aspects of media, not just not just pure literacy, but also like what we call like visual literacy as well. So that's one point that I really wanted to share today. And I think we are still seeing, okay, let me just see. I don't see any Q&A. Okay, if there's no Q&A, I guess I will just have to continue. Yeah, but definitely for those participants in here, I can't really see, but you know, we would love to hear your comments and questions about these two comic books in particular. You know, especially if like say, you know, if you're a creator yourself, or like say you know, you want to, or let's say you're a reader and you're curious to know more about our characters. definitely drop us some comments or questions. We'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And if not, I think, yeah, like, earlier on we were sharing that there's a discount code for readers. We do hope that you guys will make use of this generous sponsorship from Viency Lee and the Singapore Book Council. And on top of that also, we hope very much to keep in touch with you readers. I think for us now, we haven't been doing bookstore events, and definitely we really miss meeting our readers at schools and at book events and whatnot. So it'll be really great if you can stay in touch with us on social media. If you can, like say, let us, yeah, like, you can follow us on Instagram. We recently started ramping up our video content on our YouTube channel. So there's quite a lot of us. We're trying as much as possible to boost our digital presence and to be with our readers as much as possible. So we'll really appreciate it if you can also stay in touch with us via social media. And yeah, like, I don't know, like, how's everyone doing? I think now is like for us being part of the Asian Festival of Children's content. Obviously, like, the Book Council team has done a great job transforming everything to an online format this year. But yeah, we very much, we look forward very much to everyone staying well and coming back to the bookstores and book fairs and events, hopefully next year or the year after that. But yeah, I think if that's all for today, perhaps I'll just leave you guys with with a short video of Danny and Zaki talking about Elizabeth Choy. And I guess while you guys are watching this, you can also leave us your questions.
Okay, I started doing drawing when I was a kid. I always had a passion to draw. I always liked comic book, and it started from the passion of reading comic and drawing a comic book.
I think I've been writing drawing for a long time. My first comic I ever did was for my sister's birthday. That was when I was like 7 or 8. I did like a Superman kind of comic inside. I even detailed down to the commercials inside it. I even redrew those. Yeah. Then later on, when I was in secondary school, I had some friends who were into drawing as well. So we made our own comic stories. Yeah. And later on in college, I studied creative writing and script writing. Yeah. And from there, I got the passion to write novels. And eventually that led me to meet other friends who wrote comics. And then I was asked to write for like a test for this artist, and that's when I learned how to do the format of comic book scripts.
I think it's the easiest format to tell a story, right? Once you get the visual right and the medium right, it's easier to tell a story. Besides doing film, there's a lot of people involved. I think it's a straightforward format to tell, and people will get it more easier.
Comics as a medium is very easy to understand. It's very visual, so anybody who, any young person or any old person can read a comic and understand the concept a lot easier. And you can overlay words and picture, and you create your own image in your head. And speaking about comics also, like when there's words, you can also learn your language, be it English, Malay, Chinese, Japanese, whatever. Comics actually creates a higher form of literacy than, say, just reading a novel or any other form of literature like newspaper or whatever, because it combines both things together and you understand a lot of things better that way. Well, first of all, it's fun. Any creative endeavor has to be fun before you embark on it. It's always exciting when, of course, I'm primarily a writer, but when I give my work to my writing to an artist, to see him execute my vision, right, is really exciting, and it gives me more passion to tell and push the story and the medium of comics as much as I can. It's always good to see it printed out. Elizabeth Choy is a war heroine. In the 1940s, she was captured and tortured by the Japanese, imprisoned. She survived, and she went on to live a very long life. She should be regarded as one of Singapore's greatest heroes. She also, I think, is an empowering figure, both for males and females, children in general. She really speaks to the power of being resilient in adversity, and she really inspires all of us to be our best no matter what the situation is. Yeah.
So the challenges is a lot of challenges, right? Firstly, because we are already like a man of, for me, a man of time. Because Elizabeth Choy is long time ago in 1940s, right? So the story that I got to maintain certain emotion that put in back then, and I got to put in a certain detail of the story that, you know, it's already past. Singapore have passed that kind of story more than 50 over years. So that is the challenges that we need to keep in time, and, you know, to tell a great story with a great emotion in that story.
I think writing every project is different. Every piece of writing has their own form of challenges. Elizabeth Choy was a bit, not say difficult, but different, because it was a very well-known story. Her story was quite grand, and the medium comic, in this particular comic, we had a certain time frame and a certain number of pages, so we had to decide what was pertinent to the main story we wanted to tell, versus the other extraneous stuff, because we could go on and on and on. So we decided to have a certain focal story, which is a capture by the Japanese, and then we branched out to the other parts of her life from there. So her story was some ways easier than other stories because there was so much history, but some ways more difficult because there's too much history to gather and to focus on one thing.
I think because there's a lot of men and women out there who doing good things to our country in Singapore, right? Who don't have a chance to tell their tales and their stories and their ups and downs. Most of our heroes is all in the past that, you know, people who got no chance to tell their side of the story. So I think it's a good thing to showcase our Singaporean heroes or heroines, right? So from there, we shall learn a bit of their courage and what they went through and how we need to strive on.
For a young country like Singapore, we always need like a hero or a mentor to look back to. Every kid has a parent, right? So like Singapore itself, we always need to look back to the people who came before us and see what their successes were, and in turn those become our role models, and they inspire the young people now, the young people of every generation henceforth, right, to be better, to believe that people like Elizabeth Choy, people like Lieutenant Adnan, the founding fathers of Singapore, what what did they do that was right, and what can we do to be more resilient and fight for our own future. This in turn, I think, makes us proud of our own history and gives us a lot of faith in our nation, in our government. Maybe even in a current crisis like this, we are probably probably our great-grandchildren might look back upon this and say, oh, how did the people of 2020 survive this turbulent time? So everybody creates their own history in a sense as well. Yeah.
I hope the reader can read the book and really get the spirit of Elizabeth Choy, how she determined, right, with all her torture and the surviving skill that she had, right, and put on the faith to go on every single day.
Regardless of race, language, religion, gender, right, whatever you get out of it is that Elizabeth was a strong woman. She looked for the bright side of life. She never gave up. She fell and then she got back up again. That was her main thing. Yeah. So I hope that this inspires young people never to give up just because they failed one exam or they couldn't do well at something. There's always other things there's always more motivation in your life than just that one thing. You can always keep falling down, getting back up again, and then keep going forward. Any good story inspires me. It's either movie, novel, comic, cartoons, and especially if you cannot deny, like when you're reading newspapers or the current headlines, those always inspire us more than anything else, because you always think, oh, what if this happened instead? So all these situations make you want to think and outside of the box and create new stories.
Hi. Okay. So I think that's it for our little session today. Yeah, I see no questions, but okay, it's fine. I think we're all like, it's a nice, cool Saturday. So we're wishing everyone a good afternoon ahead, a great weekend ahead, and we'd like to thank everyone who joined today. Today's book launch is presented as part of the Asian Festival of Children's Content, the 2020 Digital Symposium. And once again, today there'll be more book launches, but the actual festival is happening over next weekend, featuring speakers from Singapore and also, like beyond Asia. So you can find out more about the festival at afcc.com.sg. And as for us at Asiapac Books, my name is Ling Ying. Today, I'm so sorry, I forgot to introduce at the start. But anyway, do stay in touch with us on social media like Instagram, Facebook. We have a YouTube channel as well. So please do stay in touch and have a great weekend. And we'll see you guys again soon. Thank you. Bye.